So hello race fans and welcome to a new kind of video here on Team Bomber Sports. I wanted to do something like this for a little while. Now I've got a new camera and a microphone so you can enjoy my dulcet tones better. What better time to do it?
Green flag.
And it's just been probably my favourite weekend of the NASCAR calendar. So it's time to kick off a new format called the Top 10 Shootout. It's kind of like Top 10 Shootout formats in motorsport. You know, you take the 10 best guys in qualifying, put them into their own round, they go out one at a time, and only at the end do we know the order of the top 10. So there's that tension. People near the end of the session could come in, set a storming lap. People near the start could do that. Or rain could fuck up the entire session halfway through. Unless I throw my Coke can at the camera. Now I'm not going to do that. Let's get on with the list. In 2015, the Southern 500 was finally returned to the Labor Day weekend date it had previously occupied from its genesis in 1950 until political wranglings took it away in 2004. So to celebrate, NASCAR decided to go retro for the weekend. A totally original idea had the V8 supercars not done the same thing for the 2012 Bathurst 1000. Credit to NASCAR though, they took the idea all the way, going as far as getting legendary broadcasters Ken Squire and Ned and Dale Jarrett to get involved on the TV coverage and call 100 laps of the race in the middle, a move that still gave me chills to this day. That's like Murray Walker and James Hunt telling David Croft and Martin Brundle to sod off halfway through a Grand Prix. So 2015 was a roaring success, and in 2016, 38 out of the 40 cars in the field carried badass throwback paint schemes. So in our first Top 10 Shootout, it's time to find out the best in show for 2016. Now for me, there's some kinds of throwbacks that I don't prefer as much. I generally prefer throwbacks to actual cars rather than sponsor throwbacks. So for example, the 41 ran the old Haas branding, the 24 ran the old Napa style. I'm not so much of a fan of those because they are still kind of fictional. They're like the companies going, oh look, we existed in 1975, which you may have done, and yeah, in some places, like for example, Chris Bush's 34 Loves Travel Stops car showed the original branding from the old service stations that they used to have. Great, that's cool. It just, I don't know, I think the throwback to an actual old car that ran kind of invokes more memories, it's way more evocative, and they just look badass on the new cars. So I think I generally prefer those. And that's when, before we even get to some of the cars that weren't even sodding trying, like the number 10, which just sort of looked like you could run it next week at Richmond. And speaking of which, the 78, Martin Truex Jr., auto owners, what was up with that? Like, it basically almost wasn't a throwback, which is probably why it ended up winning. In the first year of the Southern 500 throwback, a non-throwback car wins the race. This year, what RJ O'Connell termed on Twitter a faux-back car wins. Maybe in 5 years we'll have worked this out. Mind you, at least they did try. 38 of the 40 teams did get in on the spirit of things. So who were the two party poopers, eh? Brian Bloody Scott. Oh, God. The only good thing he did all weekend, pretty much, was not put Tony Stewart on blast for blatantly wrecking him on the back straight for no apparent reason. Yeah, your Sam Hornish 2015 throwback didn't really do it for anyone. The other one was Reed Sorenson in the number 55 for Premium Motorsports. At least there you can make the guess that, hey, money came into it, they could barely afford it. I mean, the number 30 of Josh Wise weren't going to run a throwback scheme because they didn't have a sponsor for the race. So they were like, well, if it's a case of repainting our car or being able to pay our mechanics, they tweeted about it, and a sponsor came on board to the race, and they did the throwback Dale Earnhardt Senior paint scheme, which I thought was brilliant. So firstly, I'm going to go through the honourable mentions, the cars that did not even make the top 10. Jimmy Johnson, the Dale Earnhardt Senior stroke David Pearson throwback. The number 47 of AJ Allmendinger, throwing back to Bruce Hill. Tell me you knew who he was before this race. Tell me. Go on, you're lying. The 27 car of Paul Menard, aka Al Unser Jr. Boy, this one was close to making the top 10 shootout. I agonised for a long time over this one. Damn it, pick up the diecast of this one. This one looks fire emoji. I can't believe I just said that. The number 11 of Denny Hamlin, which when I first did this video, I erroneously identified as a Cale Yarborough throwback. It wasn't. It was a Darrell Waltrip, so I'll make sure I get this one right this time, based on the old Junior Johnson cars. Number 42, Carl Larson. Now, this was interesting. This kind of reminded me of Joey Logano's throwback from 2015, where it was actually thrown back to the old Shell Porsches, the old Group C cars, the old sports cars. So it wasn't a NASCAR throwback per se. And this was the same. This was based on the first ever Ganassi Target-sponsored race car, which was Eddie Cheever's 1990 kart, champ car, USAC, IndyCar, whatever you want to call it. Number 16, Greg Biffle. This is going to annoy some people. Alan Kulwicki throwback. They got it spot on, and I love the fact it even said Underbird on the front, like the original Kulwicki Ford. That was brilliant. The number 20 car, Matt Kenseth. This was a tied throwback, and it's the kind of standard tied scheme we've seen down the years. It was thrown back to many different drivers, Ricky Rudd, Darrell Waltrip, and of course, Ricky Craven, the man responsible for probably the most famous moment in Darlington history. Finally, the number 38 of Landon Castle, aka J.D. McDuffie. I know my man Brock Beard was really up on this car. He was following it. He's writing a book at the moment on JD McDuffie's career. And he did a starting grid, one of his old starting grid videos for this race. I'm so hyped. What a way to honour an absolute legend of the business, one of the absolute unsung heroes of NASCAR. Now the top 10. Oh, goodness me. We're going to go in a sort of rough order here of who finished where and lowest down in the field. So I guess we'll have to start with the first entry, which is number 1. Number 6, Trevor Bayne. Mark Martin throwback, second year in a row. Another Valvoline scheme, but thrown back to one of his earlier Thunderbirds. This looked awesome. I love the fact they nailed the number font, and it's one of those schemes that looks great on the modern Gen 6, just as good as it did on the old car. Sadly, didn't have much of a very good race. He had engine problems at around the half-distance mark, so that's why he's first up on the list here, because he finished almost last, I think. Great entry, goes straight in at number 1 on the list, goes straight in there. Second up, Smokey Eunuch. Mario Andretti. Casey Mears. Now, this was a low-key one. This kind of grew on me as the race went on. I kept seeing it, unfortunately, because Casey Mears kept getting lapped. He had a tough day, as many people do at the track, too tough to tame. That's kind of where the name comes from. But the car just grew on me, and it looked better of the night because it had the slightly reflective, pearlescent-looking glow to it. Does it go in above Trevor Bayne, though? I don't think so. So it goes in second. Bayne keeps the lead. Third up is a guy we've mentioned already in this video. Drove like a bit of a dick on the night. Had engine problems late. Didn't really have a great last Southern 500, but it doesn't matter because for many people, he had the best in show. It's Tony Stewart's number 14, Bobby Allison throwback. Man, this thing looked good. It was so great. Again, similar sort of gold colour to Casey Mears' Smokey Eunuch. Had the red on it, the old Coca-Cola graphics on it. It was all there. Bonus points awarded for the crew shirts. And the fire suits, all retro style as well. Magnificent, looks great. Goes straight in at number 1 on this list, so it knocks Trevor Bayne off the top. Will it stay there, though? It's going to take a lot to knock it off, let's be honest. Mind you, I think the next one's got a very good shot of knocking it off. But I should preface, I think this is down to personal preference a lot. It's Ryan Blaney's number 21. It's a David Pearson throwback. Oh, let me state right now, if I was a fan of NASCAR in the 1960s and 70s, I would be the biggest David Pearson fanboy going. David Pearson is my favourite legendary NASCAR driver of all time, and may go in at the top, May go in at the top. In fact, I need to get a pen. This is getting serious, lads. I think it goes top, It goes top. I may have annoyed some people there. Soz. This is my list. And I've even got a throwback shirt on. Hope you noticed that. Next up, here's another one that went down very well with a lot of people. Was supposed to be Dale Earnhardt Jr. driving it. Sadly, he announced over the weekend he's sitting out the rest of the season with concussion issues. We hope you get better real soon, Dale. Please, we want to see you back on the track. So Jeff Gordon subbed in his place, and he instead got to drive Buddy Baker's Grey Ghost. It didn't do it for me initially, but seeing the old car and then seeing it under the lights here with that slight metallic look to it, baby, it looked good. No wonder they call this thing the Grey Ghost. It was a stealth bomber. Where does it go, though? Where does it go on here? I think it goes third. I don't think it quite beats Tony Stewart and Ryan Blaney. Again, personal preference, but this is such a competitive list. We get to another car which meant a lot to a lot of people. This is one that really tugged on the nostalgia heartstrings, especially if you're a 90s kid. Jamie McMurray and his Bill Elliott Mac Tonight McDonald's car. It's so good. It's such a colourful looking car. Such a lovely kind of midnight blue and yellow look on it. Straight away, you look at it and if you just squint, you can see a 94 instead of a 1. It was that evocative. It was that well done. This is your classic example of a throwback scheme done right. It nailed it right down to just nailed it all the way down to the minor details. The Scream's Toy Show a day. This one nailed it times 94. It nearly goes to the top, I think it... I'm literally doing this on the fly. I picked the top 10 that I want to do in the shootout. I am ordering them on the fly. Go second, it doesn't beat Blaney and Pearson for me. This was actual qualifying, it would be in the hundredths or the thousandths of seconds. It's that close. I'm sorry, Ryan King, my podcast brother, he loves this car to death, and I know a lot of people do. So do I, it's just... 4 to go, and next up we have one of what was 2 Tony Stewart cars out on the track. But the first of those, Carl Edwards is number 19, Toyota, aka Tony Stewart's number 20, Home Depot Pontiac. Now, this one resonated a lot with me. I was a big Tony Stewart mark back in the day. I loved him in those early 2000s run. He had with Joe Gibbs along with Bobby Labonte in the number 18. We'll get to him in a minute. I love the fact that Aris, it still had Aris on it. It didn't have Home Depot sponsoring it. But Aris changed their font so it was the same as the old Home Depot font. So even though it said like first for modems or whatever it was in the old Home Depot font, which I thought was a lovely touch. Where does it go on the list? That's the question. I think it goes just behind Tony Stewart, so it goes straight in 4th place on the list. Speaking of Bobby Labonte and Tony Stewart, let's get to the other Tony Stewart throwback in this race. It was also technically a Bobby Labonte throwback. It was Joey Logano's number 22 Pennzoil car. throwing it back to Joe Gibbs' old car. This was Joe Gibbs' first win in NASCAR competition with, I believe, Bobby Labonte behind the wheel. Tony Stewart also drove this car in the Busch Series back in 1998. Looked great then, still looks fantastic now. And where does it go on the list? Where does it go? Where does it go? Where does it go? Where does it go? Third. It just beats Tony Stewart, so Tony Stewart is beaten by one of his own cars. Got 2 more to go, and they may well be the toughest of the lot, especially when I tell you what the next one is. Kyle Busch is number 18. Dale Jarrett one. Another one of people's favourites. Oh, God. This one was pretty close to me, because obviously it's the interstate battery scheme, which was on the number 18 car for a long time. Bobby Labonte grew up with it. Well, I grew up with watching Bobby Labonte drive it. What this scheme in particular was throwing back to specifically was Dale Jarrett's win in 1993 at the Daytona 500. And mainly, this will score very highly as well. It looked phenomenally tastic, and it provided us an amazing moment when Ken Squire and Ned and Dale Jarrett got back in the commentary booth again. It did give them the wonderful opportunity to recreate the moment that Ned Jarrett called his son Dale home to win the 1993 500 when they were watching Kyle Busch's car at some point. And that's, for me, the full spirit of the throwback weekend in full force. It was just wonderful to watch. Third. I think he goes third. It just doesn't beat out Blaney and McMurray. This is just going to kill me. And finally, we got to see a lot of this car. It led a record high amount of laps. And it's a real contender. It is a real contender. This is Kevin Harvick's number 4 Busch Beer Cale Yarborough throwback. Oh, baby. It's a good one. The little touches like the gold wheels, the gold numbers, the blue and white. It was such a smooth scheme. This is one that just is timeless, and it suited the Chevrolet body perfectly. And as I say, we got to see it a lot, so maybe it's about to influence where it's going to go, potentially. In all honesty, I would have loved to see this thing win. I wouldn't have minded that at all. It dominated the race. It was the absolute boss. It was like Scott Dixon levels of OP throughout the race. And to be honest with you, I totally don't blame him throwing his own crew chief under the bus after the race, because they were crap. They were absolute rubbish. What do you expect him to say? And he ended up losing the race to a guy who was barely running a throwback at all. Thanks, Kevin Harvick's crew. And we're about to decide who wins this top 10 shootout. We're about to decide that. Will it be Ryan Blaney and the David Pearson throwback? Will it be Kevin Harvick and Cale Yarborough? See, last year it was easy. Like, I had Kyle Larson's Mellow Yellow one, which was a slam dunk winner for me. It was fine. This one, though. Oh, God. Oh, man. Oh, man. Blaney or Harvick? You know, I said I'm a Pearson mark earlier. I think that's decided it. I put Harvick in second. Your throwback winner, the winner of the first top 10 shootout, is Ryan Blaney with his David Pearson throwback. Silver Fox was rather good at Darlington, and it turns out even his schemes are still very, very good afterwards. No doubt you're probably already foaming at the mouth disagreeing with my decision. That's fine. Honestly, any one of those could have won. There are others that didn't even make my top 10 shootout that could have won it. It was so difficult paring it down to just 10. And as you saw, I genuinely didn't have an order going in for this one. I didn't know where I was going to put each one. I was deciding on the fly. And most of my editing here is going to be me cutting out the bits where I'm going... This was such a tough one. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this first of a top 10 shootout. Let me know if you enjoy the format, if you want to see more like this. I do have another one written and filmed ready to go if you guys want to see it. So let me know in the comments your personal top 10 picks for the best throwback schemes at Darlington this year. Destroy the like button like Tony Stewart destroyed Brian Scott. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here and you haven't already. And I'll see you guys next time on Team Motorsports. Bring the noise.